everyone. Welcome back to She Burst Podcast. I am your host, Brittany, and today's guest is Stephany. Hi, Stephany.
Hi, thank you for having me.
Thank you so much for being a guest. So, I wanted you to share with my listeners a little bit about your story of surviving narcissistic abuse.
Yeah, of course. Thank you. For years, I was living a different story through a lens of why me. And it's really only recently that I feel like I've really broken a pattern in my life of calling people into my life through relationships, through relationships that would teach me lessons that I still needed to learn about owning this as my story. So I think for a lot of us, sometimes it's really hard to own our story. And so for myself, I needed to learn something about owning my story, and not as someone else's story, but it's a story of healing those parts within me that had me feeling unworthy of love, so that I would call these people back into my life over and over again. And they would reflect that back to me, through their abusive words, or through the feeling of never being enough, through the gaslighting or the manipulation. But now, I can see that these people showed up in my life and they were the exact teachers I needed at that time. And, for a really long time, I saw these two men in my life, these two past marriages, I saw them as monsters. I saw them as people who were out to destroy me and out to destroy my life. And it has taken me a while, but, I can see them as something more now, if that makes sense. So, I would continue to ask, why me? Like, why is all this stuff happening to me? When, I could look back and I could see that there was violence and there was manipulation, and, coming in from someone with my background in domestic violence, my background as a lawyer, my background as an advocate for men and women who have been in abusive relationships. And here I have this background, but I didn't even realize I was in a toxic relationship. I didn't even realize I was in a narcissistic relationship. So, sometimes I wonder, was there a part of me that was still drawn into the drama, drawn into the story, drawn into the victimhood of what was happening to me, instead of being able to see what was for me through all of that. And, it wasn't until after 17 years within both of these marriages, and the second marriage ending in violence, where I found myself blind in my eyes. Like I literally could not see for 7 weeks. And actually, I think it was like 6 weeks, but it just so happened I was living in Florida, and I went out boating with some friends, and I sunburned my eyes.
Really?
And yeah, it's a thing. It happens. I have really light hazel eyes, and I woke up the next morning from boating and I was completely blind. I squinted my way to my eye doctor, and she said, your eyes look like someone took sandpaper and just destroyed your eyes. So, I'm blind. I'm just sitting here thinking like, gosh, all these things have happened to me. My house was destroyed in Hurricane Ian. We had a house fire that destroyed a different home. I had a baby that was born with a very rare genetic disorder, and lost loved ones to COVID, like all these things. And I feel like I was just sitting literally in the rubble of my old life. And I was sitting in this mess, feeling like everything had been done to me, blaming both of these men who I just felt like were destroying my life, and just really sitting in victimhood, saying, why me? I'm a good person. I didn't deserve any of this. No one deserves any of this. I've lived a good life. I was a good mom. I was a good wife. I did all the things you were supposed to do. I went to college. I went to law school. I did everything right. And here I was, just all this stuff constantly happening to me. And, and as I'm sitting here, thinking about my I, like God, source, spirit, whatever you resonate with. For me, it's God. And I just remember just sitting there thinking, like, what is happening? And just thinking, like, is there a lesson here that I need to learn? Because I just can't, I'm just so stuck. I can't move past all this terrible stuff happening to me. And, I feel like sometimes God, source, the universe, whatever, gives us these moments in time, these moments where if we get really still and get really curious and start to ask questions, about these things that are going on in our life, like we take a step back and we ask these questions, and then we can start to see that maybe there's some truth in what is manifesting all around us, like what is playing out around us, whether it's through a physical manifestation like me with my eyes not being able to see, or whether it's through losing everything. But for me, I really was physically unable to see the story playing out in my life. And
It's like you try to see the good in people. Even if you can see that they're bad, you still see the good in them. Like,
oh yeah. And you still, like, for me, I still saw myself as the victim, which, yes, I am the victim, but I just got stuck in the victim story. Like, everything's just happening to me. I'm a good person. I didn't do anything. Like, why am I still stuck here? And for me, being physically unable to see, I was unable to see my story playing out in front of me, because I needed to see my story through a different lens. I needed to shift from the victim story to the hero story. I needed to be the hero of my story. And I needed to, and it was, when I had this revelation, I was able to shift my perspective. I was able to look at the two men in my life and see them as teachers, not as monsters. And, as I started to take my power back, I could see what needed to be healed. I could see what needed to be released. I could see where I needed more compassion, where I needed more forgiveness. But ultimately, I could see the patterns in my life and the shifts in the story that I thought was my reality, that I thought was my story, but it's no longer my story. And as I look at so many people out there, men, because it does happen to men, and women who've been through these relationships with narcissists or just super toxic people, I began to see that it's a pattern. It's a pattern of unworthiness, and sometimes it's so hard for us to see all of that. Like, I didn't know I was in 2 marriages with narcissists. It took me stepping outside and be like, just so confused. I don't know what's happening here, because, with all the love bombing and all the kind stuff, and then the devaluation, and then the explosion, and all this stuff.
Can you explain to my listeners what love bombing is? I just learned what it was like 2 hours before you came on here.
Oh,
so
really?
Can you explain to my listeners what it exactly is? Because I was like, what?
Yeah, so I'll actually take a step back and just define what narcissism is. So narcissism is a personality disorder or personality trait. And to be considered a true narcissist, they have to meet like 5 of the traits out of the, however many traits are in the DSM, whatever. And so it was based on this old Greek mythology of this guy, Narcissus, who fell in love with his reflection. And he loved his reflection so much that he never left. And so for a narcissist, they some of the traits are a very inflated sense of self-importance. They believe that they are unique and superior to everyone else. They lack empathy, so they struggle to empathize with the feelings and needs of others. They always just put themselves first. They'll manipulate and exploit anyone to achieve their goals, and they don't care who they hurt in the process of getting there. But the funny thing is that they actually have a very, very fragile self-esteem and a very fragile ego. So, beneath the grandiose exterior that they project to the world, many of them are just very fragile, very hurt, very low self-esteem. They're easily hurt by any criticism, but they'll dish it out to everyone.
Oh yeah.
A constant need for attention. Like they seek constant admiration, attention, validation, and all of that's to boost their very low self-esteem and their self-worth. They have a very difficult time maintaining relationships because they're so self-centered. They lack the empathy. They have trouble maintaining long-lasting, healthy relationships. And so what happens when a narcissist does seek out supply, and, supply is a person that will give them the validation and the attention, like everything that feeds their ego. So what usually happens in the beginning of a relationship is they tend to mirror you. You think that they're your soulmate. They tell you you're their soulmate. And for me, when my second husband showed up, I manifested him. I put it out to the universe. I was ready to date. I was ready to be with someone. I'm really good at manifesting. I wrote my list of everything I was looking for in a partner. Even tall, dark, handsome, divorced dad with only boys, and, someone who's lived overseas and has traveled, someone's cultured, all this stuff. And I met him a week later. So when he was telling me we were soulmates, I was like, yeah, I manifested you. I threw this out to the universe last week and you match everything. And so, so in the beginning, it's they are trying to attach to you as quickly as they can, because then they have you hooked. And so it's like for my second ex-husband, it was everything that I was, he mirrored back to me. So essentially you fall in love with yourself, and that's the hook, because they project you to yourself. They mirror everything back. And so then they have you hooked. And then once they have you hooked, then they start the devaluation. And that's, for me, my ex would say in the beginning, it was like, oh, I love that you're a strong, independent woman. I love that, you're a feminist and this, and like you have strong, independent friends and all this stuff. Like he loved all that about me. So he said. And then later on in our relationship, it was like, oh, you and your stupid feminist friends, like, I hate all of you guys are so stupid. You're this and that, you're this. And, and it's like, wait a second. You told me that's what you loved about me.
Yeah.
And so that's what makes it so confusing. And sometimes it's hard to see all of that until you take a step back and you can actually see it. And so what happens in the initial stage is called the trauma bond. You formed this bond with this person because they mirror you, and two, even though the criticisms, the manipulation, the gaslighting, all those things start to come into play, we're bonded because we truly do believe they are our soulmate. We truly do believe we are meant to be together forever. And it becomes it's like an addiction. That's the only way I really can explain it. So if you take a person who is addicted to a certain drug, they keep using because they're trying to reach that first high, that first dopamine influx. But every time they use, it goes down. And so they can use all they want, but they'll never reach that first high. And so similarly, when you're in a narcissistic relationship, you're trying to reach that first high because you know they know how to treat you well. You know that they know how to say nice things to you and do nice things to you because they did all that in the beginning. And so even though there's the manipulation and all these things, you still stay with them because you're like, wait, but maybe if I change this about me, we'll get back up to where we were. Maybe if I do this. And so then you start putting it all on yourself, thinking, I'm the problem. When really it has nothing to do with you. It's them. It's their game. It's everything that they've done. And they keep you
and stuff.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And gaslighting, in case you don't know what gaslighting is, it is where they make you question your reality.
Yeah.
So it's insane. And again, I use my second husband, Jace, as an example, because he's the closest relationship, that I've had. But he would say things like, oh, Stephany, it didn't happen that way. Yeah. You did this, and this is why it did. And I'm like, no. Yeah. But over time, they keep saying that. And then it's like, wait, did it happen like that?
Yeah. You're like,
and so, yeah. And you start to question your own sanity. Yeah. And that's another reason why it becomes so effed up, because you're like, wait, I know that didn't happen like that. But they refuse to look at any other scenario or entertain any other story. It's their story. They take your story and and it is so confusing. I always have kept a journal, and I still journal to this day. And going back, I could see things, and I would start to write them down. Like, he would have this Mr. Hyde and Dr. Jekyll personality. And so many people I've talked to share the same thing. It's like, oh, one day they're like this, and the next day they're like this. And you never know which part of them is going to present themselves. And so that's what they do as well, because they want to be a mystery. They want to keep you confused. They don't want you to know who they really are, because if you really knew who they were, you'd run out of there as fast as you could.
Exactly.
But they just do have all these little tactics to keep you confused, to keep you second guessing yourself, to keep you questioning your own sanity. I mean, they can bring you to a point where you feel like you're going crazy because you're like, wait a second, I know that it happened this way.
Right. They do. So they really do. They really do. And then you're like, am I crazy? Do I need to be on medication? Because I remember this. But you're saying I did something different.
Yeah. And the sad thing is that there are a lot of women who are on medication that shouldn't be on medication, because they have said, well, you're bipolar. Well, you're this. Well, you're this, because you can't figure it out. And really, there's nothing wrong with you. You've just been having your brain and your mind effed with for a really long time.
Exactly. 1000% true. Even parents have done that. Like, my mom has done that before. And I'm just like, Mom, are you going to really try to gaslight me? Because I have been writing down everything that has happened to me since my sexual assault. And I'm pretty sure I know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you have to stand by that and just be like, no, this is what is happening. And so, when you're in the middle of the relationship, though, it's hard to see all of this.
Yeah.
And I didn't have words for what all the behaviors and all the things that both my ex-husbands did. My first ex-husband, he was a cheater. He cheated all the time. And in fact, he left the marriage by going with another woman. And he told me, he's like, oh, I'm setting you free. Okay, well, I mean, we could have talked about this,
Right.
It didn't have to end this way. But for me, even someone with my background in all of this, I didn't see that as abuse.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, oh, he's just a cheater. No, that's abuse.
Yeah.
That's abuse. He was abusive
Mm-hmm.
for 13 years.
Yeah.
So looking back, I can put words to everything. I can put words to all the behaviors and the things that they did. But without understanding what narcissism is and narcissistic abuse, I didn't know. I just knew something was wrong. Something just didn't seem right. Like, why is he twisting my words? Why is he like trying to tell me that it happened this way when it clearly didn't happen that way? And so once you understand what narcissism is and understand, like, okay, all these things happen because he's just playing by the same game book as every single other narcissist, and this is what they do, then you can put words to what happened to you, and then it becomes more empowering. And so, for myself, going back to my story, I spent so many years in this victim state, just feeling like, man, all of this stuff is happening to me. And then being married to two narcissists, like, if that doesn't scare you, I mean, it's like, who wants to be in a relationship again? They're all narcissists, right? Like, I don't want to be married to a third. I don't even want to
a third
date.
one. Oh no.
And so it's like, okay, so let's look at your story. So what are the lessons? And we look to the lessons so we can see what needs to be healed so we can break those patterns. But for myself, being stuck in my victim story, I didn't do anything wrong. I can't see any lessons here except for just horrible men abusing me. And when you're in that victim state, you can't see the lessons. I couldn't see the lessons for so many years. And even when I left my first, things ended with my first husband and I moved on to my second husband, there had been a couple of years in between. I thought I was healed. And so going back to me manifesting him, yeah, I did manifest him. And God, in all his graciousness, gave me the lessons that I hadn't learned, because we're going to keep repeating the same patterns in our life until we can stop and see the lessons and break those patterns. But you can't see the lessons when you're still stuck in victimhood.
Exactly.
And for me, it took me going blind for 6 weeks. It took me completely stepping outside of my story before I could really see that, oh, you can't see the lessons because you're viewing your story through the wrong lens. You're seeing your story through the wrong perspective. And so when I was able to make that shift, I felt, and I could see the lessons, I felt God was saying, yes, Stephany, it's done. You've broken the patterns. You made the shift. And it's done. And that's true freedom. And so, this is why I like to share my story, because there's so many of us that are still stuck in the victim mentality. It's hard to move forward with that. And so for me, when I made the shift and I could say, okay, let's look at my two relationships. I mean, it really takes you stepping outside and really looking at your story. So for instance, this is what I teach people to do with their story is, okay, let's say if my first ex-husband, Josh, what did Josh teach me about relationships? What were the lessons that I learned from him? Okay, so I learned that I need to have boundaries.
Yeah.
Now, I didn't have boundaries with my first husband, but I was his boundaries police. Oh, I put boundaries all around him. And this is so, he was constantly cheating, constantly online all night, like, talking to girls and stuff, because he was constantly looking for that validation, that next supply. He needed that. And so for him, I can say, thank you, Josh, for showing me that I need to have boundaries. Thank you, Josh, for showing me that I cannot be anyone else's boundaries police. I don't need to be confronting other women and telling them, hey, he's married, stay away from my husband. Because I did that a lot. He has to be responsible for his own boundaries, and I need to be responsible for my boundaries. So going into my second marriage, I had boundaries. And I was very clear, these are my boundaries. But with Jace, he kept pushing up on my boundaries. And so I would push him over a little bit, and then he would push a little bit more, and then I'd push a little bit more too. And so it's like, okay, thank you, Jace, for showing me that I can't push my boundaries. If someone is starting to push my boundaries, that is an automatic no. I need to be firm in my boundaries. So see, but you can't see these lessons when you're stuck in the victim story. And now I can say, okay, thank you for showing me that I needed to learn these things. Thank you, Josh, for showing me that I'm worthy of so much more. I stayed for 13 years because I thought that's what I had to do. I thought that's what a good wife does. We stay, we try to work it out. Let's go to therapy. Well, he never wanted to go to therapy. Okay, well, we have kids together, so I stay for the kids. But then you're just miserable. And it's not helpful for anyone. So I can say, Josh, thank you for showing me that I am worthy of so much more. Thank you, Jace, for showing me that I am worthy of so much more. I'm worthy of respect. I'm worthy of love. I'm worthy of being treated nicely. I'm worthy of kind words. I don't need to put up with any of that. And so when you're able to make that shift and see the lessons, then it's easier to forgive and to have compassion, and I know we can do like multiple episodes on just forgiveness. For me, it is a constant daily thing. It's not like, oh, okay, well, yeah, I forgive you. You did all this effed up stuff and, ruined my life and this and that. I forgive you. No, it's taken a long time for me to get to that point where I can say, okay, I forgive you. And it's only when I was truly able to see the lessons that I was able to forgive, because then I was able to see them as teachers and not as monsters.
Because a lot of these people that manipulate people and that are narcissists, they really don't care. They just go on to the next victim. Do the same thing to them.
Yep, and both of them have done that, and they will continue to repeat the same patterns throughout their life, because that's another thing too. In order to see your lessons, in order to know what to heal, in order to break those patterns, it takes you looking inward. It takes you going deep and being truly vulnerable and honest with yourself. It's a self-reflection. And for narcissists, angry, controlling men and women, they don't want to do that because then they have to look at their ugly self. And it's much easier to just move on to the next supply and pretend like nothing ever happened. They live in this delusional world. Even to this day, my first husband, Josh, won't admit that he ever had an affair.
He still won't?
No.
Wow.
No, he won't. He will not admit it because they create their own reality. I mean, we all do. We're all creators of our reality, but they really live in a delusion that they have created.
So he's okay with just being a liar. Like,
oh yeah, that's what they do. They are. They're all liars. And you know, they'll say, I didn't do that. The whole gaslighting. I mean, it's all lies. The manipulation. It's all lies and deception. And it is. Once you get out of it, and once you can see your story and see the lessons, you know what to heal, break those patterns, and then you have true freedom. We don't have to be afraid. I don't have to be afraid to go into another relationship because I've healed. I have learned the lessons this time around. I have put in the hard work. And so, for any of the listeners who are like, well, okay, well, how do you break the trauma bond? How do you heal from this? Do you just sign up for therapy? Well, that's a good question. There's so many therapeutic modalities out there. You don't have to just go to talk therapy and find the therapist that will take your insurance. Because one, a lot of therapists aren't familiar with narcissism. Or, they are to an extent, but so many narcissists trick therapists, just like they trick judges and lawyers and all this stuff because they're super charming people.
Yeah.
And so you do want to find one that does understand where you're coming from.
So is that what love bombing was? I still don't remember what love bombing was.
It's where they just throw out all these compliments at you. It's where they mirror you in a sense. So it's, hey, Brooke, oh my gosh, you are so beautiful. Your hair is so beautiful. I'm going to buy you flowers. I'm going to do this. And every day I'm showing up and doing all these incredible things.
That was my last ex-boyfriend.
Yeah. And then they start devaluing you, but it's, it's the cycle. And then they get caught. They get caught in a lie or caught in something, and they're sorry, and they come and apologize if you're lucky. I have 2 ex-husbands that never once apologized for anything. If you're lucky, you might get an apology, or their apology is more flowers. Well, let me just love bomb you back to me. Yeah, I know I did that to you, but I'm just going to love bomb you back to me. So they're sending you cards. They're sending you flowers. It's okay. I don't know if I don't watch the Kardashians, but I have heard this story. So when Kim and Kanye got a divorce, he bought the house right across the street from her, so he could keep eyes on her, so he could watch her. It's it's power and control. And the love bombing is just trying to bring you back into their control. Because angry, abusive people only abuse when they feel like they're starting to lose control of you. I shouldn't say only abuse. There's lots of other things that play into that. But it's when they start to, if they think they're going to lose you. So say you've been bonded with this person, the trauma bond, you're together, everything's great. And then all of a sudden he turns into this different person and he starts acting this way. And you start thinking, oh my God, I don't want to be with this person anymore. And maybe you start pulling away a little bit and they see that they don't have control over you. So to get control over you, they will do more love bombing, or they'll just discard you, depending on on who you're with.
I'm so glad you
It's
survived them. Like, that sounds like a nightmare. You got one after the other, though. I couldn't do it. I couldn't do it.
no, and that's why, you really have to heal. You really have to see the lessons and break those patterns in your life. Otherwise, you will repeat the same thing over and over and over again until you learn those patterns and break those lessons. I mean, and learn those lessons and break those patterns in your life. And so it's, really taking the time when you get away. You have to go no contact. So no contact in this world of dealing with narcissists and narcissistic abuse. No contact means you cut them off of everything. You don't even let them, you don't even let yourself be available to be a future potential supply, because with these people, it could be years later. They will still look you up. They will still stalk you. They will still try to figure out how they can get you again, because, maybe they're running low on supply and you're a good one. And okay, I just need to throw some love her way. And
here's some money for groceries. That's how they get me.
Yeah. Oh, you got some bills? I can help you out, honey. There's this funny meme that I've seen going around, and it's like there's what was it? The narcissist it's like a narcissist looking for a place to live. It's like I love you. Let me get and so it's, hey, I just met you, but I'm like having these really strong feelings and this really strong desire for you, and you're like, oh my gosh, you're nothing like my ex. Right. Let's be together. Let's just live together. Like, why rush destiny? Why?
And they do that stuff. They do.
Yeah. And it's like, what? And so what we can do is work on ourselves and heal. Go completely no contact. Don't give them any room to get a hold of you. Change your phone number. Yeah. Block their phone number on I had to do that. Block your phone number. Change your phone number. Change your address. Don't let them know where you live. Move. Yeah. I had to leave. I left my ex-husband in Florida and I moved to Oregon because I can't. And yeah, and block them on the email. That's much harder, but you can figure it out. and then you have to block their friends and block their family and whatever, but whatever it takes to protect yourself. And for you to really heal, you have to completely make sure that you are safe from them. And then you can work on your own healing. So a couple of years ago, when this was 2020, I actually separated from my husband, Jace, and filed for divorce and all this stuff. And I was just like, I need something. And I found EFT. So EFT is emotional freedom techniques, otherwise known as tapping. So you tap on the meridian points of your body. And as you're tapping, you say certain things. So there's usually 3 rounds. And the first round is really sitting with these big, heavy emotions. Just sitting with them, acknowledging them, and processing them. Then the second round is releasing those emotions. And then the third round is tapping into the person you want to become. So for instance, this is what I do with people. Say you just left your narcissistic abuser and you're struggling with no contact, or you're struggling with breaking that trauma bond, that addiction. You're struggling with guilt. Like, why did I stay so long? When I finally became aware, like, why did I stay so long? So the guilt, not being able to forgive yourself, feeling angry, mad that all this stuff happened to you, angry at them, but also sad because you love this person, you hate this person. You know, there's all these conflicting, big, heavy emotions. And for many people, we don't know, unless you've been trained and have the tools, you don't know what to do with these big, heavy emotions. You know, like, I don't want to be an angry person. I don't want to be a bitter person. I don't want to be stuck in my trauma. And so I help survivors sit with their emotions, release them, and then tap into the person they want to become. So for instance, I can show you, say it's guilt and shame. Guilt that you stayed too long, and shame that this is your story. So I would start like this, and usually I would interview the person first. You know, we talk beforehand and see what's coming up. And I use your words, not my words, but then I speak and the person follows me. So I would say, even though I stayed too long in this relationship and I have all this guilt, I'm choosing to forgive myself because I love and accept all parts of me. And even though I went through this really horrible, traumatic experience, I'm choosing to not be stuck in the guilt because I love and accept all parts of me. And even though it was really hard to get away from this person, I'm trusting that I'm in the right place and that I'm going to work on myself and that I will heal because I love and accept all parts of me. And then we would top on the head. I have all this guilt. There's so much guilt. I have all this guilt because I never left. I stayed way too long and I feel bad about myself. I'm struggling to forgive myself for what happened to me. I'm struggling to forgive myself because I didn't deserve this and I didn't do anything wrong, but I stayed too long and all this stuff happened to me. And so, you know, we just do stuff like that, like really working out these big, heavy emotions. And then we release them. So we would do a round like, maybe I could see my trauma in a new way. Maybe I could see the things that I went through in a new light. Maybe I could choose to let go of all this guilt, of all this shame, release it from my body. My body is holding in all this shame, and I don't want to be sick. I don't want to have all this trauma in my body. And so what if I chose to let it all go now? And then we do a whole bunch of rounds of releasing whatever's coming up. And then the third round is tapping into the person you want to become. So I would say, I'm a strong woman. I am confident. I am worthy of love. I'm worthy of respect. I'm brave for leaving. I have a lot of courage. Maybe I can see opportunities from my struggles. Maybe there are opportunities for me. Maybe I can help other women who've been going through the same struggles because I am powerful. I am brave. I'm love. I'm confident. You know, so then we tap into the person you want to become. And so the thing that I love about EFT, especially for survivors of narcissistic abuse, is that it's a way to rewire your brain. And so after so many years of trauma and criticisms and the manipulation and the gaslighting, you know, our brains are a mumble jumble of not truths, the lies that we lived through for so many years. And so we have to rewire, we have to deconstruct all of that and rewire our brain. And one of the things with EFT is that by doing the tapping and tapping on the pressure points, it's signaling the brain to rewire it. And so I even so even, you know, I have here. I have clients who don't believe all these things yet. Like, they don't believe they're brave. They don't believe they're strong. They don't believe they're empowered. But we still do it, because even though you might not believe it, we can still tell your brain. And over time, you will eventually believe it through the repetition and through doing all of this.
Yeah, it's true. Before I let you go, I just want to say
So
that
it's
that definitely does work. It does. Because I've had
yes,
that done
yes,
in
it
therapy.
does.
It does. I want to thank you so much, Stephany, for coming on my podcast today and chatting with me.
Yes, thank you for having me. And I hope that, you know, someone was touched by my story, and, you know, they know you now, you know a little bit about narcissistic abuse too. And so if you see any of the gaslighting or the manipulations, you can know what it is.
That's true. You have a great day.
Thank you.
Bye. Hey everyone, thank you all so much for listening to She Birds Podcast, and see you next time for the next interview. Bye.